PS Plus is having one of its best months in terms of game selection, so you know there's going to be a massive problem to go along with it. And I know there's a ton of issues in the games industry right now, from layoffs to performance to everything else, but I think budgets are the core issue of why we aren't getting big first-party PlayStation games. And I'm sure you saw the news that Helldivers 2 is coming to Xbox. I want to talk about why I think Sony needs to be careful about this going into the future. How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is PSReady, my channel all about PlayStation. Hope you had a great 4th of July weekend. I hope it was relaxing, and I hope you got at least a day off to celebrate Independence Day. I spent the entire thing in the pool sleeping, so that's why I'm red and sunburned. Thanks for putting up with it for a couple of videos while I heal. Let's get right into this first news story here because it has to do with PlayStation Plus. When it comes to PlayStation Plus, I think Sony kind of proved everyone wrong in the sense that when they launched Extra and Premium, everyone just assumed that a lot of the bigger games would be put in Extra or Premium, because the difference between those tiers and the Essential tier is that when you get a game in the Essential tier, as long as you continue paying for the basic service, you can download that game and play it forever whenever you want. I'm sure there's a couple of games that have been removed over the years, and then there was the PS Plus collection, which they've had some weirdness with, but for the most part, like 99% of the games that they've added to Essential, you keep forever. So when they launched the Extra and Premium tier, everyone assumed that the good games would get put in those because, of course, they can remove them after a certain amount of time. So like they can pay developers less to keep them in the service for an indiscriminate amount of time, then remove them, and then the game will be only available if you buy it. But they haven't done that. They've had a really good run this year in terms of games being offered in PS Plus Essential, so I want to give them some praise before I offer some criticism of the PlayStation Network as a whole. I think the Essential games have been great, and this is one of the best months in a while. Diablo 4 is a huge game to get for free, even if you discount the fact that, the live service aspect of Diablo 4, I'm going to say it as someone who's sunk hundreds of hours into it, it's really disappointing. It's like simultaneously bare bones while also having cool armor and some cool, it's just a mess from top to bottom. But when you put all that aside, the core game of Diablo 4 was really good. It's a really dark, grim campaign with great ARPG combat, really diverse classes that feel different from each other, and the multiplayer when you play with friends is top notch. So getting that for free in PS Plus Essential is awesome. I know it's an Xbox game, but it's really an Activision Blizzard game, and I'm sure Blizzard was like, oh, we'll line it up with the new season launch, we'll get people to download the game for free, hopefully they'll buy the battle pass. Don't buy the battle pass. The battle passes are terrible and they've only gotten worse, but it's still a great game to get in PS Plus. Then you've got Jusant, which is like a mountain climbing indie game that runs in Unreal Engine 5. I'm pretty sure it's a year old or so at this point, but it's a really solid game to get for free because, those are the games that you play once and never really go back to. You get that changing experience where you get a new gameplay mechanic, you get interested in this new stuff. Then by the time you're done with it, you're kind of done with it. So like having that in Essential is great because it's a good bonus game that you might not pay for otherwise. And then everything else was just filler, but it was a solid PS Plus Essential month. So that's why it really sucks that when people went and added Diablo 4 to their account, well, they couldn't add it to their account. They got an error that said it's not working, try again later. And then that lasted throughout the entire 4th of July weekend, which really is an extra level of annoyance because when do people have time to play games if they're not in high school or college, right? Like, holiday weekends or vacation time. So to have this stuff consistently break down at the peak concurrent user times, like holiday weekends, Christmas break, summer vacation, is just super frustrating, and it doesn't need to be this way. All Sony has to do is really just make a division that really focuses on the health and quality of the PlayStation Network and the PlayStation Store, and I think it has improved largely over the past generation or so, but consistently it has little issues that stack up on top of each other and make a more annoying experience than people really want to deal with because it's not free. It's something you're paying a yearly fee for. They consistently raise the price on it, and they should offer a quality product in return. It's almost there. I don't want to act like it's terrible, but the classic adage exists where, a little problem, if you leave it unsolved, continues to become a big problem, and it always comes up at the worst time, which is now. The worst time for an issue where you can't redeem a game on PS Plus is when you actually add a good game. It doesn't matter in the other months where you've got a B or C tier game, but when you have a huge AAA game like Diablo 4, one people would probably want to add to their account, that's exactly when you want to make sure things work. And it's really a backhanded compliment in the the sense that you just saw all these layoffs going on at Xbox. They're gutting studios. Turn 10 is done. So like all of the rivalry between Gran Turismo and Forza Motorsport, that's over. Forza Motorsport as a franchise is dead. Gran Turismo is the reigning champ. They're focusing on the arcade game Forza Horizon going into the future with Playground Games. It's crazy that the studio that made the Forza franchise to begin with is done, and the one that made the spin-off is the bigger property that Microsoft has under their umbrella. So clearly Game Pass, the hardcore subscription model with day one AAA games, just isn't working out. So Sony, their half step towards the full subscription service is really paying dividends for them in a good way. So I'm happy about that. It's just, I want these little problems solved. Like on the Steam Deck side of things, when you complain about an issue, no matter how small, like when you turn up the volume on the Steam Deck, sometimes it would cause a stutter. Someone put a Reddit thread up that was like, hey, this is annoying. Valve turns around and fixes it in a weekend. Sony takes months or even years to address this stuff because, they're making so much money in other departments. They probably look at the data and say, well, yeah, people are having issues redeeming this game on PlayStation Plus Essential, but like, it's not that big of a deal because it's not affecting our engagement or whatever. But the longer you let it go, the more it is going to affect your engagement, and you don't want your competitors to figure out stuff that you're doing wrong, right? Like they could totally capitalize on this at Nintendo by fixing their online service before Sony, and then Sony's going to have to scramble to fix it. So it's good to get ahead of problems. I think this needs to be addressed, but hopefully you were able to redeem Diablo 4. Let me know how it's going if you did down in the comments below. I'm just going to roll right into the second news story here. It's coming from Shuhei Yoshida. Man, this guy's doing the interview rounds ever since he left Sony. It feels like he's just letting every complaint, issue, and problem he had at the company go whenever he does a podcast. This time he was on Kit and Krista, who I guess were the Nintendo Treehouse hosts. So they were like glorified marketers at Nintendo. Then they left to do their own podcast together. Now they've got a great Patreon. I've never watched any of their content, but they did have Shuhei Yoshida on. And out of all the stuff he said, which a lot of it is, you get a whole paragraph from him, then some news site clips out like one sentence and turns it into a whole news cycle. This is the most like straight up awesome thing he said about the way games as a whole are headed these days and why it's a massive problem. So I'm just going to read it to you. I saw some analysis or estimate of one franchise released during the PS4 era and PS5 era generations double the budget, and that has reached the point that we cannot recoup the investment. So this generation, PS5 generation, I think is the first time that the industry really truly believes that, there has to be something that has to be done. I really hope he's right on this, that the industry is waking up to the fact that more money does not equal more players in every case. Like obviously with free-to-play games that already are off the ground like Call of Duty or Fortnite, spending more money to continue to churn out content and battle passes, that really results in more players for those games. But on the single player side, what Sony's actually good at making, there's so many examples this generation of doubling the budget of these games, doubling the time it takes to make them, and not recouping that money on the back end, which results in them continuing to remaster and re-release these games over and over again. The first one, of course, is The Last of Us Part 2. Naughty Dog, I've talked about this ad nauseum, but I'll just cliff notes it. In the PS3 generation, we got Uncharted 1, 2, and 3 and The Last of Us. Then in the PS4 generation, we got The Last of Us Part 2 and Uncharted 4. That's 2 games. I'm not counting remakes. And after that, we haven't gotten anything. We've got The Last of Us Part 1, which was not made by Naughty Dog. We got The Last of Us Part 2 remastered, which was like repackaging the PS5 patch. And then we're still waiting for Intergalactic, which might be a PS6 game. So all of these games are taking so much longer to make, and their budgets are going so far through the roof, and it's not resulting in better sales. The Last of Us Part 2 did not sell anywhere near as many copies as the first game. And another example is Spider-Man 2. That game took a long time to make, like 5 or 6 years. They used the same map, but they increased the budget everywhere else in terms of graphics, ray tracing, adding on to the map, making 2 stories for Miles and Spider-Man, 2 skill trees, the web wings, Venom in the game, Kraven in the game. Like they went overboard with adding stuff and more time and more money and more development. What did it result in? A worse story and worse sales. So like it just goes to show that spending more money is not the key to success. Focusing on the core aspect of what makes your game quality, which is gameplay, is what really matters to people at the end of the day. And I know everyone's sick of everyone glazing Expedition 33, but the reason people latched onto that game so much is because it felt so fresh and new. And I don't want to paint this picture that no developers get it, right? Like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 absolutely cleaned up this year. Expedition 33 cleaned up this year. Everyone's loving Death Stranding 2, it really improved on the first game a ton. Elden Ring Night Rain is a great example of smart money usage. They reused assets from all the Dark Souls games, whether it's the Gaping Dragon, the Smelter Demon, of course the map from Elden Ring, but they made a really quality product in doing so, and they only charged 40 bucks for it. And shockingly, people are calling it a cash grab, but that's how you know no one's played it, because it's one of the best games, if not the best game I played this year. I downloaded it on PS5 to help my friend Brad get the achievement of beating 3 Night Lords in a row. I started with the fresh character, Wilder, and I did the first boss, and then I did the T-Rex, and then we did the Dark Drift Knight 3 in a row. So like, it's a game where it rewards you for learning how to play, because all of the skills that I got on my PC copy beating the entire game translated directly to a fresh character, which was awesome. So like, it's not the true apocalypse that everyone's making it out to be, because there are developers doing the right thing, which is making smaller budget games and focusing on core gameplay systems and making sure that everything that matters is what they focus on first before focusing on things like increased graphics, ray tracing, and everything else. Like, if you want a great example of a game that went in the wrong direction, let's look at Doom: The Dark Ages. I am the biggest Doom fan ever. I got Doom 2016. I beat it on PS5. I turned around and bought it on PC and beat it on a harder difficulty. I beat Doom Eternal multiple times. I got to the hardest difficulty on that. I played the DLC. Then Doom: The Dark Ages comes out, and they didn't listen to their core fan base. They tried to reinvent the wheel in a bad way, and then it just doesn't run well on the PlayStation 5. The whole point of a Doom game is that it's like a great looking product at 60 frames per second and really focuses on first person shooting. This game does not really focus on first person shooting. It does not run at a locked 60 FPS on console, especially PS5. And then on the PC side of the fence, it has forced ray tracing, which stopped people from buying the game. So there's examples of how to do it right. There's examples of how to do it wrong. I think there are, one-to-one examples of right and wrong, because there's so many great games coming out this year that people are playing and buying. Like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is doing incredible numbers, but I think the lesson Sony needs to learn is that graphics aren't everything, and making your game bigger for the sake of being bigger isn't everything. There was a much more measured approach between Death Stranding and Death Stranding 2. Like Death Stranding 1, it's full of filler in the middle. There's a lot more side missions than there need to be. The story is like really front loaded and back loaded, and then the middle, nothing really happens. The second game is paced so much better, and I think it's gonna result in more people beating the game than people who beat the game the first time, which I think is a very low number no matter what console you look at. So it is fair criticism of the past, but I think if you look at now, Sony is correcting the issue in real time with Death Stranding 2, and I'd assume with Ghost of Yotei, because if you look at all of the stuff they put out in the last generation, the one that focused the most on the less is more idea, like really focus on what works in your game and don't include things just to include them, is Ghost of Tsushima. It's like a 40 to 50 hour game if you want it, but if you just want to get through the story, it's like 18 to 20 hours. The story is great. The gameplay is great. It made slight tweaks to the whole open world formula, but didn't do anything too dramatically different to make it look like a crappy marketing bullet point or anything like that. And they were rewarded for it. I remember going into that game, the sentiment was very down. Like no one was really into the trailers. There wasn't a lot of hype for it. It was coming off The Last of Us Part 2, which, had a ton of controversy around it and kind of put a little bit of stank on Sony's IP brand as a whole. And it totally cleaned up. People absolutely love that game. It still has people talking about it to this day. And I don't see any reason to believe Ghost of Yotei would be any different. I think it took a little too long at around 5 or 6 years, but that's kind of short for the current development cycle we're in. So for the most part, I think Sucker Punch is another shining example of what things need to be happening at Sony. And finally, let's talk about Helldivers 2 coming to Xbox. I've got a little bit of a different take, but that starts with a very similar take. First of all, I don't feel good about this at all, mainly because the Xbox community, at least on Twitter, is insufferable. Like, I just need to say it. They're terrible. They clearly don't play games. They only care about wins. And then, while Xbox is doing their 5 millionth layoff in the past 5 years, doing things like going to Rare and saying, wow, Everwild looks great. You're canceled. Oh man, this new MMO from ZeniMax Online that's been in the development cycle for around 5 or 6 years looks amazing. Sounds amazing. Canceled. John Romero, we're going to go to your studio the day before our layoff fest and tell you your game's coming along great and looks phenomenal, and then pull your funding, which results in your entire studio getting laid off. Then you got people for one day saying, man, I feel bad for everyone who lost their jobs. This is a dark day for Xbox. The next day, Helldivers 2 is announced. Back on top, baby. Xbox is the future of gaming, blah, blah, blah. Let's forget about all those layoffs and talk about how this huge Sony game is coming over to Xbox. I kind of expected this after seeing Marathon is coming to Xbox, because clearly the live service games, they want to get them on as many platforms as possible. That makes a lot of sense. Also, it's not a true first-party game. It is a first-party game under Sony's eyes because, you know, they funded most of the development, if not all of the development. And I think Nix's is the one porting it over to Xbox. So clearly there is a lot of actual Sony involvement, but it's not something like, I don't know, The Last of Us or Uncharted. You know, Death Stranding's an example of a single player game, but in Japan, Kojima owns the IP. There was clearly a contract in place from the jump to get that game on other platforms, so it's not that big of a deal. So like from that perspective, I'm not super stoked about this. I don't want to see any first party or second party PlayStation games going over, whether it's Silent Hill 2 remake or this, even though they are going to. I don't have to like it, and I don't. But the real thing that really bugs me here is that Sony totally whiffed it with Arrowhead. They funded Helldivers 1, then they gave them infinite time to make Helldivers 2. Like, I'm pretty sure over a decade to make Helldivers 2. They gave it a ton of marketing money. They gave it a ton of support. They gave it a DualSense controller, special edition, X, Y, and Z. Then like 2 days after it comes out, the people who are working on it at Arrowhead are like, we want it on Xbox too. It's like, have some respect for the people who funded your game and gave it the insane amount of marketing that really helped it become the biggest PlayStation launch of all time. So in the past, if this happened, like with Sucker Punch, Insomniac, Naughty Dog, and everyone else, when you have a success like Helldivers 2, Sony would be knocking down their door day one to just buy them. Like, buy them. Flex your money. You've got so much money. Buy the studio that gave you the biggest launch of all time. The only reason I can think of as to why they didn't is because it was a huge launch on PC and a big launch on PS5. It wasn't a massive PS5 game. It was a big PS5 game, but it was a massive PC game. So maybe they looked at it and said, well, it wouldn't really help us in our core mission of continuing to keep the PS5 ecosystem centric, but they made so much money off of it. You can bet that their next idea is going to be good. I just think it's going to be a great game, and then they let it get away. It's going to be self-published and multi-platform from the jump. It just doesn't make sense why Sony would let this studio go. And now not only are they not getting exclusivity on their next game, at least timed exclusivity, the first game, the one that really blew the studio up, is coming to Xbox, which just bums me out. I know a lot of people are trying to rationalize this. I don't blame them. Really, I am too. But like, this is why I always get upset when Xbox makes a big sweeping change, whether it's Game Pass, you know, having every game day one, whether it's buying huge companies like Activision. It has a fallout effect that won't hurt them. They have infinite money and all their competitors do not. So like, the consequences for Xbox are this doesn't work and we move on to the next massive radical change, or it does work and we cause everyone else to follow in our footsteps and make the experience worse for their players. And then if it eventually fails, like Game Pass is right now, who cares? The other people will die and we'll be able to continue on with our AI mission or whatever, because our parent company is Microsoft. Thankfully, we have a ton of great single player games on the horizon, and you know, Gears Reloaded is coming out on the same day on PS5 as Helldivers 2 is coming out on Xbox, which is kind of interesting, I guess. But you know, it's a little bit of a bummer for me personally at the end of the day to see that community rewarded for their bad behavior. Anyway, guys, as always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching and shape on.